Good morning and welcome to today's episode. We'll be discussing cyber risk quantification and estimating the cost of a data breach. But before we start today's session, let us go through a preamble of the importance of this session. In Nigeria, financial sector related institutions depend on IT infrastructure to carry out their business. And this also pose significant risk. Financial institutions are also among the top targets when we look at cyber attack nationally. And this is driven by the high transaction volume, the real-time payment, and the sensitive data they process. Billions of naira might be lost if institutions operating in this sector fail to understand risk quantification. But most importantly, advising the board in a way and manner that makes sense. This session would give Chief Information Security Officers the ability to explain to top management and their board how data breach can impact the business so they can take actions that will lead to them making not just technology upgrade, but mitigating cyber risk to the barest minimum. So let's get started. As usual, if you have a question, drop it on the chat box. We are going to answer those questions in the course of the session. As a CISO, one key issue you would face is letting the board feel your pain. You need a new technology. You need software update. You need software upgrade. They may not understand if you don't know how to explain it in a way that makes sense. So the modern CISO will be judged by the ability to explain cyber risk in financial terms. So board members and top management can make informed decisions. If you tell your board we have 10 vulnerabilities on our website, on our core banking application, they may not understand the impact. So when you are a CISO in a financial sector, you need to understand that cyber incidents are predictable business risk. And regulatory bodies like the Central Bank of Nigeria expect you to have risk governance in place. And the board of director wants you to explain in a clear manner what is actually the problem, not technical. And that's why this training will help CISOs to be able to have the skill set to explain to their board what should be done. And they will take action because you will tell them in the right manner. Ideally, most organizations still quantify risk based on traditional terms like high risk, medium risk, low risk. They also use things like a severe impact, critical threat. Unless a board member has a technical background, this will be difficult to comprehend. Board members, by nature, wants to make decision based on return on investment. That is what they see. You as a CISO, you see the technical aspect. Our software needs to be updated. Our number of staff is not sufficient to manage the digital drive of the business. Those are not what board members look at. What is the expected loss? How much are we talking about? What's the probability of this cyber risk occurring? When you speak in this way, you get their attention. They want to listen. Many a times, most of the board reports that focus on cybersecurity are technical. And board members, once they get to that point, they are out of the room. They may be there physically, but their attention is not with you. So as a CISO, we need to upskill, understand what executive and board members are interested in, and give them that information. That will help you perform your role with the latest technology and have access to the most recent trainings that are paid. Cyber risk quantification will translate cyber threat into financial exposure. In order for you to have a budget for your cybersecurity need, and in order for the board to understand the report you present. So this training is not about how you should write a technical report. No. It is more about how do we communicate with executives and board members. It's a skill a CISO should have. Because if you cannot quantify the risk, board members will not prioritize it. Board members traditionally are more used to credit risk, market risk, liquidity risk. So you also want them to see cyber risk in that light. You want them to see cyber risk as an operational risk because they are used to terms like that. When you talk about liquidity, the board member is likely going to understand it. So you need to translate your cybersecurity risk in a plain language they are comfortable with. Now, simple definition of cyber risk simply means the likelihood of a cyber event multiplied by the financial loss it would cause to the financial institution. So your board members are interested in knowing what are the cyber events that should keep us worried? What are the cyber events that we may be exposed to? How likely is it that our institution will be affected? When it occurs, what will be the financial damage? And how can we reduce this damage using the cheapest and fastest way? And most times, they also want you to have either the technology, the people, or the process existing. So if a CISO can answer this clearly, you become a strategic employee or partner rather than a technical personnel. Because ordinarily, a board member sees the CISO role as technical. So when you are making your presentation, the attention they will give to the guy in finance or marketing, that is not what they will give to you because you sound too technical. So we need to move from sounding technical to be what? Strategic. So we are going to now go deep into the scenario-based risk model. This is what board members want to hear. And that is the only language that works. Not your number of vulnerabilities, not your high risk, not your medium risk, not your chart that shows your cyber exposure. Those are not what they want to hear. You may also tell them that, but after you have explained in a language they are comfortable with. So don't burden your board executives with your technical tools. Don't bore them with your compliance checklist. Don't bore them with your vulnerability count. Rather, discuss scenarios with them. And how do we do that? Let's take, for example, a financial institution. When you are talking with your board member, get them to understand that if a credential is compromised, it will lead to what? Unauthorized account access. They will know the meaning, they will feel the pain, and they will ask you, what can we do? That is when you now talk about your multi-factor authentication. But if you tell them, let us go and implement multi-factor authentication, it may sound like a financial burden at the first instance. And some of them may kill the idea on the spot. And they may not want to look stupid to say, okay, let us reconsider it. But if you tell them, see, a ransomware could affect our banking operation and there will be downtime, they will understand, oh, if there's downtime, so we can't make money, we can't disburse loans, we can't receive payment. Then they ask you, what can we do? You now say, okay, we need to install a DDoS prevention application, an intrusion detection system, an intrusion prevention system. What will it cost us? And when you are putting the cost, you are not just telling them the cost, you are telling them that this is the amount of money we will lose if this downtime should last for 24 hours. They will not have reason to say, okay, let us implement. Now, if you are looking at the third party risk, which we discussed yesterday, don't look at it that, oh, we need to ensure all third parties have SLAs. Yes, it is good to take that approach, but you're talking with board members. Let them know that CBN could sanction them. They know what that means. The NDPC could sanction them. They know what it means. And they say, okay, head of legal, work with the CISO to implement. That is the way you get board members' attention. So, irrespective of their previous background, board members are more interested in scenario-based analysis than technical, because scenarios they can relate with, but not all of them may have the technical knowledge when we start using our key terms in IT. Imagine you tell them they are using end of life application. They will ask you, is this still working? You say yes. So if it's still working, why do we change it? Why do we stop using it? So you need to let them understand the scenario. Let it make sense to them before you talk about the technology. Because a lot of CISO have this problem with the board whereby board don't approve technical investment that will help them perform their role. And even when they approve, this budget is also shared with the IT. So the CISO has little budget to make a positive impact in the organization. But when something goes wrong, you are held accountable. So when you look at your financial bucket, every CISO needs to understand how to relate this with the executive. If you look at incident response and recovery, let them know that if something goes wrong, they will have to spend money on digital forensic. They may also need to get a consultant for this emergency, and these are costs that may not have been factored in. They may also need to rebuild applications because those applications may be corrupt due to a cyber attack. Let them look at the business disruption from the angle that it's going to affect the core banking application, it's going to affect payment settlement, it's going to lead to revenue loss. Then they ask you, what can we implement to prevent this from occurring? Also relate it with the existing regulatory and legal guidelines within the financial space. We have the CBN cybersecurity assessment that they have to comply with. We have the data protection they have to comply with. You need to let them understand that this compliance that they are required to go through also come with administrative fines. So if the fine is 2% of your annual gross revenue, or 10 million naira or 2 million naira, and you are talking about compliance that will cost less than half a million naira, they will approve because the cost to avoid the administrative fine is insignificant compared to the fine. Then look at the reputation of the brand. If customers don't make deposit, if customers don't come for loan, they won't have that market share they so desire. So if you talk from this perspective, you get their attention and they ask you what to do. Then you talk about the technical things that should be deployed. That is how you win the board as a CISO. So you become more strategic, still maintain your technical skill, but you understand what the board should hear. And that is what makes the difference between a certified CISO and just anyone filling the role. Because as a certified CISO, you should have gone for some trainings that will expose you on some of these things. So let us make a practical data breach cost. Yesterday, I shared a website where you could use and give the board a picture of what it costs when a data breach occurs. We'll also share another website which you can use to do that today. So if a fintech experience a credential compromise and 250,000 customer records were exported out of their system by a malicious user, let us look at what that fintech would likely have to bear in terms of cost. In terms of responding to that cyber attack and recovering their data, if it is severe, they may spend close to 120 million naira. Now, if their business will be disrupted for a significant period, they may lose between 80 million to 160 million. It may not make sense to some of the tier 2 institutions, but for the fintech that are global, that may have experienced some of this downtime due to cyber risk, these figures are close or less than what they lose when cyber attack occurs. Imagine big brands with millions of customers. Imagine losing transaction fees for a period of 48 hours. You could imagine the financial impact. Now, when such occurrence continue, there will be lawsuits, and that will also be borne by the organization. So let us put that at 120 million to 300 million. Now, the reputational trust that you've built over the years, you will lose it and you need to start doing advert to win back customers. So that is also a cost. So plus or minus, that will cost between 440 million to 980 million for a big fintech. For tier 2 institutions, it's not going to be free. You also have to bear some cost. So when you let them understand how this will impact their business, then you can begin to get their attention and say, okay, if we need to make investment in our cyber security, and we are going to do that over a period of 2 to 3 years, what will it cost us? And if what we are going to lose, let's say on the average 440 million, it means that annually we are going to put 120 million somewhere in case this incident occurs, so we can go back to it. So why not we take part of that money and implement some of these technical controls? That now makes your budget to what? Gain the attention of the board. That now makes your board to see if we could even think about cybersecurity insurance. So that it is not just about annually we file our reports to regulatory bodies and we get a compliance certificate or we get an approval. What are we really doing to drive cybersecurity and prevent malicious activities within the system? So if you can take this approach and try it out with your board this year, I believe the outcome will be better than previous years where your budget may not have been improved. So getting the board to understand that cybersecurity is now a business risk that is inevitable, and prioritizing this can only be achieved when you don't talk technical but you look at it from a strategic perspective, and that will drive home the trainings you so wish for, the technology you need, because you can't be a CISO without updating your tools, your work tools, because the cyber criminals go for trainings. How much more CISOs? So if criminals can go to school to learn the updated trick, why not organizations invest in their CISOs? So we shouldn't take this as just technical, but strategic. How can the business be resilient? So as a CISO, avoid those your heat map with numbers that are more or less technical jargons in the eyes of the board. Forget your technical dashboard you come and display using PowerPoint and any software that can help you get the most fine, well-placed slide. Forget those things. Those are not what the board are interested in. And don't tell them fear. Some of them are well connected. You understand? If you tell them they'll penalize and they'll say, oh, I just met this person over the weekend. You understand? And that's a key decision maker in the regulatory space. So don't use fear. Rather, let the scenario approach drive home the point. So they can make this decision not out of fear, not out of emotional sympathy. Okay, the CISO is working hard. Let's just support him. Let's send him for training. Let it not be as if we don't care. No, let them face the reality. They understand market risk. Let cybersecurity also be explained in that manner. So if you have questions, please drop it on the chat box. We'll try our best to answer all the questions. So now, as a CISO, it's good that on a quarterly basis, you update the board and top management with actions that can help you estimate the financial exposure, and actions that can direct if risk is increasing, if risk is being minimized, or it's stalemate, so that the board can be able to track whatever efforts they've put in place between the last quarter till date. Because the more you interact with the board using this approach, the better outcome you will get. So go back as a CISO and see how you can use this approach to get your board to buy into your blueprint. And I believe board members will not want their business to fail. So with that, I believe they will make the right actions. And you have to also let them know that risk is being minimized or risk is not well taken care of. So they don't hold you liable when something goes wrong. So that's just the main focus for this session. But for us to validate that learning has taken place, we need to go through the test of understanding. So let's go through the test of understanding. But meanwhile, I'll see if I can answer one or two questions before we start. Okay, someone is asking if we could share a CISO budget. Okay, what we'll do is on the WhatsApp group, we're going to post a CISO budget. I know I've done that before on the group. I've posted a guide for CISO budget. So I'll repost it after this session. So if you are not on the group, I'll also drop the link on how to get a reasonable budget from your board. So I'll drop that on the group. The next question is, how do we move from qualitative cyber risk rating, that is low, medium, high, to financially defensible quantitative risk value? Now, you need to understand the quantitative that the quantitative is what attach financials, whereas the qualitative is where we talk about low, medium, and risk. Now, as a CISO, both approach are good, but when you use low, medium, high, critical, it doesn't make actionable step for the board to take action. So the first thing you need to do is to understand the difference between qualitative and quantitative. And you need to also have the right tools to report risk using the quantitative, because that is more technical. And if you don't have the right skill, you may not be able to translate that to the board to understand. So as a CISO, the first thing you need to do is to retrain yourself to be able to use tools to address the quantitative means of risk reporting. Because using medium, low, and high is no longer working, because it's like assuming, it's an assumption scenario. So you cannot assume that a risk affecting a department that is cyber related and another department should all be put at what? Medium. And that is why that may not be efficient. So CISOs should go for retraining. That should be the first thing you should do. Go for retraining so you use the right tools to report this risk. But don't forget what we've learned in this session. When you talk to board, don't sound too technical. So that is for you yourself as the CISO and your team to understand. But for the board, be more strategic. Let it be risk-based scenarios that they relate to. That they will understand. We have another question. Okay, how much will it cost for CISO certification and training? There are different certifications for CISOs. You have certification offered by EC Council, that's CCISO. You have that of CISSP. So these certifications are usually billed in US dollars. So they could cost between $1,500 to $3,500 depending on the training partner institution. But what I would advise is if you go to EC Council YouTube page, for example, there are some free training you can have at no cost. You can start with that. And when you now go to some of these well-known cybersecurity bodies like ISACA, they also have free trainings you can use to upskill yourself. Do that before going for your certification so you have a foundational knowledge. Because if you go for certification without this foundational knowledge, you may not get the best. You will be more concerned about passing the exam than getting the skill. So you getting the certification should be an added plus to your existing knowledge. So don't force yourself, oh, I want to get certification, I want to get certification without understanding the fundamentals. So you can try some of these free resources online. If you go to Flowly's YouTube page, there are so many resources we have on cybersecurity that can compete with some of these trainings. And I will also advise, if you are going for trainings, try to also go for physical classes, because most of the virtual trainings you just read, there's nobody to mentor you, there's nobody to guide you. So you could change the approach of just online to institutions that can also provide you with mentorship so that you have the skill, you have people that have gone through this to guide you. So at the end of the day, whatever certificate you have, you can defend it because nobody will ask a CISO, what is your certificate when the network is having downtime? Can you fix it? If there's a ransomware attack and you need to work with your backup, they won't ask you to go and bring your certificate. They will ask you, fix the problem. So start with the skill, then you go for the certification. Let me see, what's the next question? Okay, now someone asked a very critical question. What red flags indicate that an organization is underinsured or overinsured against cyber risk? Now, overinsurance and underinsurance, I would prefer to be overinsured because if I'm overinsured, at least it will only affect my premium, right, that I pay. But if I'm underinsured, it means that the insurance company will not be liable to majority of the potential cyber attack, which means my insurance is not complete, right? So before you go into cyber insurance, there are things you need to ask the insurance body. What are the exclusions? If you don't ask what are the exclusions, you will not know if you are overinsured or underinsured. What are those things that are excluded from this policy I am getting? Some insurance policy come with technical support. They come with regulatory support. They also, I'm talking about cyber insurance, not your regular insurance. Some also come with forensic investigation. Some comes with training. Some come with vulnerability assessment quarterly. So you ask, what are the exclusions? Once you can answer what the exclusions are, you will know if you are underinsured or overinsured. So I think that will answer that. Let me see if there's any other question. So you can still drop the question before we go for the quiz. Okay. So let's go for the quiz while we also have questions coming in. So the first question is, in the financial sector, why is cyber risk quantification increasingly important for CISOs? In the financial sector, why is cyber risk quantification increasingly important for CISOs? So we have option A, option B, option C, and D. So you can drop your preferred option. Let's see if that's the right answer. I can see C, C, C. Okay. Triple C just dropped in. Let's see. So the answer is C because board and executive make decisions based on financial impact and probability. The next question is, which of the following best reflect how boards and regulators typically classify cyber risk in financial institutions? So we have option A, B, C, and D. Which of the following best reflects how boards and regulators typically classify cyber risk in financial institution? I have D, I have C. Let's see. Keep your answers coming in. I have A. I have C. I have B. All the alphabets are in this. Okay. The answer is B. The answer is B. As an operational, financial, regulatory, and reputational risk. So question 3 says, according to the CISO executive definition, cyber risk is best described as. So what is the best option here that describes cyber risk? Is it A, is it B, is it C, or D? Okay, I have A. The answer is C. The answer is C. So the likelihood of a cyber event multiplied by its financial loss. So question 4, what are scenario-based risk discussions? Why are scenario-based risk discussions more effective with bots than control-based reporting? Why are scenario-based risk discussions more effective with bots than control-based reporting? So why are scenario-based risk discussions more effective with bots than control-based reporting? So we have option A, option B, option C, and D. I have A, I have B, I've also seen C. So let's see what the answer is. The answer is C. Scenarios clearly link cyber event to business and financial impact. Then number 5 says, which of the following is not one of the four financial buckets used to estimate the cost of a data breach in the financial sector? Which of the following is not one of the four financial buckets used to estimate the cost of a data breach in the financial sector? So we have option A, option B, option C, and D. Okay, I've seen a lot of C. So let's see. The answer is C, technology acquisition cost. So that's correct. So I'm going to share a website we can walk around with. Yesterday I shared one. I'll also share another one now so that as a CISO, you have tools you can use to get your board to understand strategically what they should do. So on the chat box, I'm going to drop the first link. You can click on it while I also share my screen. So if you can see my screen, this website can help you estimate the cost of a ransomware. So what you just need to do is select the industry you operate. Take for example, finance and insurance. If you select finance and insurance, So if you select finance and insurance, you can select a subsector. So let me go to other finance and insurance, which is where some institutions will fall because that is what the CBN will categorize you as. So you need to give a dollar value for your annual revenue. So let me assume you make $100,000 annually, one, two, three, or less. Okay, so that will give you an idea of what your ransomware cost will be. So let me put $100,000 here, one, two, three. So you can just convert your annual revenue. So that gives you about $31,000. So that is a case. If you also want to calculate data breach with this website, you click on data breach and you go through the questions that will pop up. If you can answer these 10 questions, that gives you an idea of your cost. So let's walk through it. So in this scenario, whose records were breached? Was it employee only or customers and employee? So I want to assume it's customer and employee. So I select customer and employee and I click next. So how many people were affected by the breach? Let me give an estimate. Let me say 1,000 people or 100. So I take the bar to 1,000, right? So I move it to 1,000. Okay, okay. Over 1,000. So what type of records were exposed in the breach? Let me say personal information and credit card. I could also select personal information only or personal information and health. So let me just go with credit card, hence we are dealing with financial institutions. So you could see by the side the estimated cost, right? But I'm still answering the questions. So how were the record breached in this scenario? Let me assume it was a device theft. You understand? If I select error, you can see it increases. If I say hack, it reduces a little bit. So I will just stick with device theft. So do you store the mailing address for those records? Do you store the mailing addresses for those records that were breached? So let me say no. Have you publicly disclosed another breach in the last 24 months? Let me say no. Yeah. How would you estimate the level of complexity of your network? Let me just put it at medium. In this scenario, how big of news story would this breach be? Let me just put it as a small news. And how would you estimate your security control? Let me put it at average. Okay, are you based if I just say no? Finish. So this gives us an idea of what a data breach will cost. So you can convert it into naira value. That gives you an idea. So you can use some of these tools as a CISO to explain to your board what impact this will relate in financial terms. These are simple websites that can be used for your board presentation so they can understand what you say when you talk about the cost attached to not having the right controls. So if you have questions, you can still drop it. Meanwhile, I would also drop the link to the WhatsApp group because I'm going to post the budget for CISOs, the template, immediately after this. So I will share the WhatsApp group so that if you are not on the WhatsApp, you can still join. So I've done that. Let me see if there are questions that needs to be addressed. Don't forget, yesterday we also dropped the data breach cost calculator.com. That was explained yesterday. You can also use that to get an overview of what data breach could cost your organization. So we'll continue the training tomorrow. We have two sessions tomorrow. We have one by 11 and the other by 2 p.m. So till tomorrow, always know one thing. As a CISO, you need to get board members to understand the scenarios not just those technical jargons we use to confuse them. Let them feel it, that it is still part of that market risk, is still part of those common risks that any financial institution may face. It is not strange. Cyber risk has become part of business operations because we are now doing business digitally. So it is now an operational risk. It is no longer in isolation. Any organization that is connected to the internet already is exposed to cybersecurity risk. So on the WhatsApp group, I'm dropping the budget template for CISOs. Please try and download it so that you can use that to help your organization. Thank you very much.